We are pleased to have you at our first impressions meeting where we're going to share with you what we think is some very exciting things about the centennial celebration for the church. I think everyone's familiar that in the fall of 1920, our congregation and its founding members met for the first time in Brookside, and during the ensuing 9 months or so, put together a plan for starting this church. Now, I think everybody's familiar with a technology that currently exists where you can take somebody's picture today and project out what they might look like in 20 years. Well, this is a slightly different technology. This is a picture of Carla and Dave and what they would have been expected to look like in 1920. So we're going to celebrate the centennial as the founding members of the church did from the fall of 2020 to the spring of 2021 with a number of events. And Leslie and I have been privileged to serve at the discretion of the board as the chairs of the Centennial Celebration Committee. I wanted to share with you today the other members of the church who are serving on this committee. We feel extremely lucky to have such a talented and capable group of people to work with, and I think you'll appreciate we've been working for over a year now. A lot of hard work has been done to begin to put together what the centennial celebration will look like. There are going to be a number of events, big and small, to celebrate our centennial, but obviously one of the major areas of focus has been on the physical space and how we can better position the church for the next 100 years as the founding members positioned this church for the 100 years in which many of us have had an opportunity to participate and benefit from their vision and their foresight. Since the physical space is an extremely important part of what the future of the church will be, we've also engaged the Architectural Review Committee fairly intensely in this process, and I wanted you all to know who of your fellow congregants have served on that committee. So I'm going to turn it over to Carla and Leslie now to talk a little bit about what some of the vision has been that your steering committee has come up with.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you to the entire Centennial Committee that's been working so hard, and thank you to all of you for being here today. As you know, I don't see the church as one more organization that we're a part of, but I see the church as the body of Christ, and so by showing up here today, you are really helping us craft what the next phase of Christ's body will look like here at this corner at 61st and Ward Parkway. And you're here in this room because you care deeply about your church and because you've already invested so much of your time, your talent, and your treasure in the church. So thank you for being here to share your voice today. The congregation began 100 years ago with a bold vision. And there were people who came to the far, far, far south of Kansas City, out where there were just cow pastures, to build a spiritual home for what was going to become a new housing development. And they focused on hospitality and grace. A group of missionaries came out and they began thinking about how to make the message of hospitality and grace relevant to those who were moving out to this community. So I believe that this is part of our DNA, and it's important that we start with this. So the bold vision included 5 things that I think were there at the beginning and that have continued for 100 years. One is the congregation was deeply committed to mission and service, both financially and in a hands-on way, both in Kansas City, across the United States, and around the world. The second thing that they began that bold vision with was an open-minded sense of who God was in the world and how God could be experienced by the people of the world. That was a unique stance in 1920, as it continues to be a unique position within Christendom today. The third thing was that they were forming the faith of children and youth. That was, I just had a conversation with somebody who was a pastor here in the 1950s and 60s. That was a vibrant part of the congregation from the very beginning. We really began as a Sunday school focusing on children and youth, and it has been part of our DNA all along. The fourth thing was offering spiritual guidance and friendship to adults. In January and February, I met with a number of people in the congregation to think about our 100th anniversary, and the number one word that people used when talking about the meaning of this congregation to them was the word friendship. That this was a place where you come to find friendship that was deeper than any ordinary friendship because it was part of the body of Christ. That this was a place where you could come to grow spiritually as an adult. And the last thing was that the congregation was deeply committed to dynamic preaching and to stellar music. The stellar music that you hear today when you come to worship, to concerts, to special events, was there from the beginning, a commitment of theirs. When you come to church, you think of this as your church, but really this is 6 buildings. So the first building was the main center section of the church, if you know where Joe Walker's office is, about to where Corey's office is, the center section. And then a few years later, they added the sanctuary building. A few years after that, in the 50s, they added the education wing, the preschool wing now. And then in the 1960s and 1969, they added the youth center. And then in 1962, we built the chapel. So we are one church, but we are physically 6 different buildings. The last thing that I would focus on is spirituality and grace. When you think about the last 100 years, you can literally picture thousands and thousands and thousands of children who have been through our preschool and Parents Day Out program. Thousands of boys who have been part of our scouting program. Thousands of couples who have been married here. Thousands who have gathered to hear world-renowned theologians throughout our history. Thousands who have heard our broadcast on the radio and now on live stream. And thousands who have gathered for weddings and funerals, baby dedications, and baptisms. Before we go into the next 100 years and what that might look like, I want to just remind you that in 2014 we completed the exterior renovation of the facade. The stones were in disrepair and were quite dangerous, and we spent $5 million repairing that, and that is why when you drive past the church you just want to stop and take a breath, and why we have outdoor worship, and why so many people are drawn to this building because they see the beauty of the exterior. Some of you may remember that when we began that work in 2011, we had dreamed of doing several $1 million of work on the interior, but because of the cost of the exterior, that was not possible at that time. And so we put a lot on hold. Again, I urge all of us to not think of this building as our church, but to think of it as the body of Christ that we have received and that we get to be tenders of while we are here on this earth, that we get to gather here and receive the gifts that people who have come before us have given, and that now we get the opportunity to be alive at the 100th anniversary and to think about, with that same bold vision, that same hospitality and grace, and that same commitment to spiritual home, what will it be like for the future? And how can we be good caretakers of this place? Before any of what I'm going to show you next was even in conversation almost a year ago, we did a complete and thorough assessment of what some people call the bones of this building. And that is the mechanical, the electrical, the plumbing, the wires, the things that are behind the walls. And we realized that we have a responsibility to keep the bones of the building in good repair for the future. And as long as we're looking at the bones and we're going to be required to be good stewards of that, what are the possibilities for the future? So that's what we want to talk about next. So as we go into the future, I believe that we have the same calling that our forebears did in the faith, that we can create a bold vision for the next 100 years of Christendom here on this corner, proclaim the good news of God's love to people in our community and beyond. That we can think about what it means to be a spiritual home for the next generations who look radically different than folks did in 1920, but who still hunger for God's grace and peace. And that we have a responsibility and the opportunity to make the interior of this congregation as hospitable and inviting as the exterior, because the goal is for people to experience the life-changing love of God in their lives and to be agents of transformation in the wider community. So, I'm going to lay out for you 6 possibilities, 6 opportunities of how we can forward that bold vision, and Leslie's going to work with me to talk to you about some of the details of how that might look. Okay, yeah, so we're going to talk about these 6 visions: welcome, accessibility, safety, environmental, children and youth, adult small groups, and mission. So we can go to welcome. So one of the things we frequently say at this church, and my predecessor said it, and I hear many of you say it, is that we believe all means all. That everyone is invited here, everybody is welcome here, and we know that we have not reached that goal of the kingdom, but that we're still working on it. And one of the things that many have noticed is that finding the door is almost impossible 6 days a week. The front door is open on Sunday or for a funeral or a wedding. The preschool door is always locked for the safety of the children, except for on Sunday mornings. But during the week, 6 days a week, you come in the back door, and you're looking at the back door, and you cannot see the back door because it is hidden. And if you have ever described to somebody how to get into the church, you know it's quite tricky. So how might we really express this vision of being welcoming?
If you think about it and look at our campus as a bird would look at it, you see that we could, if we had the capacity, we could create an area here that would be incredibly welcoming. So for example, here's Ward Parkway. You pull in, you can come in here and drop someone off, or you can park in the lot over here, or you can park over here. And you can get to what is currently our back door, which is about right here. You could get there this way from the upper lot, or you could get there this way from the lower lot. This could all be glass that could look out on a beautiful plaza with a playground for the children and a lawn where there could be weddings or quiet meditation or fun play for the children. This creates a welcoming place, a sort of an adjunct parlor with a welcoming desk where you could walk in this door undercover and see someone at this desk, or you could walk in up here and see someone at this desk, and you would feel welcomed. Here's the ramp, which would be flattened out. Here is another area where you could gather, and here's the social hall. Here's another view of that door. The chapel parking lot is back here. I'm standing about where the east entrance is now, and I'm looking past what used to be the playground and towards the lot. Is everyone oriented?
Yep.
Okay, so here's the door, here's the welcome desk, here's that glass wall I was talking about, and the playground and lawn out over here. The social hall is back this way. Here's another view of it. Here's that entrance, here's that drop off, here's the glass wall, the welcome desk is right about here. Here's the stairway going up and down, and the elevator's right in here. And then here is this graduated area that right now is a ramp from that upper parking lot down. It's an alleyway, and it becomes a beautiful plaza to walk through. Here's another view of that front door and the tower of the stair. Okay, now you're looking at the welcome desk from that door. Lawn over here. This is the exit up to that upper parking lot. And over there, we'll talk about accessibility in a minute, but there would be an elevator also.
Okay, a second challenge that we have is accessibility. We have people of all ages. We have children in our preschool on walkers. We have senior adults who come on walkers. We have people in wheelchairs. And if you are in the sanctuary for a wedding or a funeral or a worship service, and then it's time to come down here, it is very difficult to get here. Some of you did that this morning. You have to go clear down the hall, down the elevator, and then either back through the kitchen or back down 2 corridors. So accessibility in the building is an issue.
So, accessibility. For example, the existing elevator would stay, but we would give it a little facelift so that it's a little more responsive. This is the parking lot on the south. Here's that plaza I was talking about, the playground and the lawn. So this would be a sort of a half elevator that would take you from ground level down to the same level as the social hall or up to the same level as the Welcome Center. This is a full elevator that would go from outside of the sanctuary on the first floor. It's about where the cry room is right now and the women's restroom. That would go down and it would drop you off right out here, the side of the social hall. Here's that other existing one, and here is the half elevator. Is that somewhat clear? No, 3.
3 elevators.
Really 2.5.
2.5 elevators. The current elevator, a new elevator by the sanctuary and social hall, and then a half elevator by the handicap parking right out here, kind of where the sacristy is, just to get in and out of the Welcome Center. Okay, and you will have boards in the back of the room for you to look at of these, so you don't have to memorize these drawings. A third challenge that we face is safety. The safety challenge comes in 2 forms. One is we have children in the building, and we now live in a post 9/11 age, in an age of gun violence, and so we continue to be vigilant about how to keep children safe and secure, and not only the actual security, but the feeling of security that parents need, that we all need for our children and grandchildren. And then a second challenge that we face in terms of safety is fire. It is a very old building, and it's a very precious building, and there are challenges in case there was ever a fire. There was a fire in the chapel due to the old electrical just a month ago.
Did y'all know that?
No.
Yeah, there really was. So, for example, if that new glass door is here that takes you to the Welcome Center, and the glass wall is here, then you would also be able to go through another door that is locked and into the preschool. There would also be a locked door here so that you could still come across the street from the chapel and into that vestibule and up those stairs. But if you wanted to go to your left, you would run to a locked door, or if you wanted to go down that hallway that goes past the old printer's room, that would also be locked. So the preschool is safe and secure and would be sprinkled.
Okay, another challenge to achieving our mission of spreading God's grace is the costliness of running this building and making this building more environmentally efficient. It's very inefficient. We spend a huge amount of money every year running our electrical and HVAC systems and repairing the antiquated systems that we have throughout the building. If we could make the building more environmentally friendly and more cost effective to run, that could free up significant dollars for us to spend on program and mission.
The point is that we have old electrical, old air conditioning, old plumbing. We have leaks. It was probably a couple of years ago that Lauren Weinhold and I were sopping up water that was dripping from the bathrooms off of the balcony and dripping down over the front door during worship. And we were cleaning that up between services, hoping that no one would see it. So we have issues that need to be addressed. And the idea is that, I'll just reiterate if you haven't understood this so far, that once we're ripping the walls open and addressing plumbing and electrical, and all of the rest of that, not fun stuff, then when we put it back, we might as well update it for our next 100 years.
Yeah, I'll just add one more thing to that. The night that we had the first meeting like this, there was a big leak upstairs in the youth center where we were having the meeting, and they came and apologized to me, and they said, "We're sorry there's a leak." I said, "It's perfect." And then I said, "But really, didn't we fix that last year?" And they said, "Yeah, and the year before that, and the year we fix it every year. The showers on the third floor leak in, and we keep repairing the same section of the ceiling because even though we repair that part of the pipe, it's connected to old pipes. And so wherever we repair it, it just continues." Thank you for nodding. Okay, we're moving on to children and youth, something more exciting than pipes. This past year, we turned away 24 children from our preschool and parents' day out program because we simply do not have enough room on that space on that first floor to accommodate all the children who would like to be in our program. We have a great preschool, it's thriving, great relationship with the church. Some of you have had your children in the program and you know how wonderful it is, but it would be even more wonderful if we could welcome all the children who would like to be in the program. We also have an emerging youth program and a growing youth program that is not only welcoming our own teenagers in the church, but they're bringing friends. And Tyler Heston, our youth minister, is crafting something called a youth service corps that will reach out to kids in the neighborhood and in the wider community who are not even part of the church, maybe even not even identified as Christian, to be a part of service in the wider community. So we have some great opportunities to build the momentum in our children and youth programming.
So this is what I was talking about with the playground. This is where the old playground was, right next up to the building. And if that moved out, it would be not only a beautiful new place for our children to play, but it also would be a beautiful gift to the neighborhood. We have presented this to a lot of the nearby neighbors, and they are very excited about it and positive about it. There could be a beautiful lawn there. When we were in Israel, there was a garden at the place where the Sermon on the Mount may have happened. And as you walked through, you just began to whisper. It just was that sort of a place. And wouldn't it be wonderful if you could walk onto this campus in the middle of the city and experience that at certain times of the day, experience that quiet peacefulness, and at other times have children playing on that lawn in a safe manner, because there's no longer going to be a driveway here. It's going to be a walkway, a plaza, a gift to the neighborhood.
This shows where we would add some preschool rooms down here on the bottom, and we've begun the renovations of the youth center. Some of you have been in it and you know it's amazing, but there are sections of it that have not yet been done. Okay, moving forward to adult connections. There are many places in the building where adults gather that are not big enough. This room is one of them. When we have a dinner down here, we don't often have enough space to seat everybody. Sometimes even if we have rows of chairs, we run out of space. So this is a room that could use some attention. The parlor is often too small, the section outside the sanctuary for receptions after concerts or weddings or funerals. And then small group spaces are sorely lacking throughout the church. For at least 20 years, we've talked about how any dynamic growing church in America today is made up of small groups. But if you're in a small group in the church, you know that there really isn't a space that we have here that is conducive to small group gatherings. So we have some opportunities to grow our adult ministries as well.
For example, the parlor could be, oh my gosh, look at those windows. They're there. We're not adding new windows. Those arched windows are there. They've been hidden by a dropped ceiling. So we're talking about revealing the beauty of this building, not adding to it. We're talking about being prudent in using the spaces that we have, making them better. So you also might notice on this that there are these folding doors that look a lot like the ones at the back of the sanctuary. And we're talking about how wonderful it would be if we could duplicate those so that our parlor could be closed off for a family waiting for a funeral or some kind of a private meeting or something that was in a more central location in the church. This is another welcoming area that would be right by the welcome desk, a place where For example, maybe moms could sit there and have their coffee and watch kids play on the grass or on the playground. Or there could be a small meeting there. Or it could be a place for visitors to gather. This is a view of, this is the parking lot on the south of the building. And this is what it might look like as you travel down past the social hall towards the welcome desk on the outside. On the inside, you'd follow the same route on the other side of a wall of glass. And this is about where that half elevator would be. That would take you from here all the way down to this level of the social hall, or it would take you to this level for the welcome center. Oh, and I do want you to notice too, that we would leave the stone. It's all still exposed. And we possibly might even be able to add some so that we have a more consistent look around our building. Here's another view from the parking lot, down the plaza, and down into the social hall here. Now, those are not new windows either. They are behind these things over here. So when those come off, you have stone and windows above it, and we're talking about re-exposing those so that we get more natural light in here. And this table that you see is where this stage is. So the stage would go away, it's dated. There are other ways that we can do the children's musical and have everybody enjoy that. But this possibly would have windows back here too, so that this room is not a basement room. It's more daylight and well lit.
So the final thing that we would present as an opportunity for our 100th anniversary is to think about, as we are celebrating our spiritual home, how can we create home for others? So in the last capital campaign that we did in 2011, we committed $300,000 to build homes in the Northeast, and that is now being spent with our partner agencies who are building affordable housing. And the recommendation has come that in this next season of celebrating our life and remembering who we are as God's agents in the world, that we work to create homes for those neighbors of ours who are without homes. It is now current known research that providing a home for a family does as much to lift a family out of poverty than any other single thing that we can do. It's very, very empowering for children and families to have a safe, affordable place to live. So this is another opportunity we present.
As we have contributed to and benefited from the vision of the founding members of this church, we feel we have an obligation and an opportunity to engage the congregation, engage the neighborhood, and engage the community as we move ahead in the next 100 years. I would want to emphasize today that this is a bold vision, and you are here as a first impressions meeting. Nothing that we have presented today is set in stone. Nothing has been done. We have simply, with the agreement of the board, engaged Christopher Mitchell, who happens to attend services here and is an architect with Architect One, and Huber Contracting to help us begin to put some of these pictures with the vision that we have created. But we desperately need your input about what appeals to you, what you like, what you don't like, what you would like to see us do. We think of this as a master plan, very much in the way our founding members may have thought in the fall of 1920 what this would look like 100 years later. But as you can appreciate, like a jigsaw puzzle, this has been put together over a number of years. And we hope that you will appreciate that what we have presented today and what the steering committee has developed as a bold vision are a number of areas that we think are important as we position the church to move ahead for the next 100 years. It's not an all or none plan, and so we want to, during this first impressions meeting, get your ideas about how you feel. And I am thrilled to be able to tell you today that we can do all of this for free. Okay, so I have asked Dave Forsey to join me in this today to talk a little bit about the numbers, and then we'll move ahead from there. Dave?
Thank you all for being here. So I'm gonna step back for a minute and let, if everyone can see the slide, I'll orient you to the slide and let everybody gasp. So of the areas that were laid out for welcome, about 4.7 million.
You can grab the handheld.
Yeah. For the welcome, about 4.7 million. For accessibility, 2.3 million. Children and youth spaces, 2.7. And connections, which is big bucket. And I'll break these out a little bit. 9.3 million, and mission, 500,000, for about $19.6 million for the overall plan. So let me, and again, my name is David Forsey, and I'm chairing the Gifts Committee along with Mary McClure and Amy Guthrie. And one, I want to thank you all for being here. I think it speaks a lot to the church congregation. We've got to set out twice as many tables as we thought. When people are knowing this is first impressions, and thinking about what's our responsibility for the next 100 years, that we're literally sitting here on the legacy of 100 years in the past, and thinking about what our responsibilities and vision is for the next 100 years. A couple things to emphasize, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the numbers. Again, as Peter said, this is a master plan. When we engaged with Christopher Mitchell and Huber, we did not want to cut back and have too small of a vision. Shame on us if we had too small of a vision for what the next 100 years would be. What is that master plan? What is the vision? What needs to be done to have a congregation and a building, a space for the next 100 years? And it's also not all or nothing. So what kind of I'm doing, and I'll introduce Dustin, we've engaged Horizons Consulting to help us go through a process here of, from these first impressions, feasibility. What can we do? And then it'll be kind of our responsibility with the steering committee and thinking about this. How do we put a $19.6 million vision into a plan that's feasible based on the amount of capital and gifts that we think we can actually raise? So there will be a very logical, what we think is a logical process to go from this master plan, this long-term vision, into the bucket of what we think we can do from a responsible capital perspective, how much gifts can we raise. Just in terms of some of the numbers, and again, I know numbers kind of in the air are hard to grasp, but does anybody want to throw out a guess if we sprinkler the building? What's a guess on what sprinkling the building would be?
750,000.
Anybody else want to guess?
Too big.
It's about $1 million to re-sprinkle the building. So when you start going through, and especially if you say, as Carla mentioned, when you start with the bones, there's a lot of there's parts of this building that are 100 years old, other parts that are 75 and 50 years old. And frankly, some of those, when they redid those, they had some of the same, well, we're going to put a smaller boiler in and we'll do it later. Well, sometimes later never came and pieces of the building didn't connect. You start with $1 million sprinkler, things add up when you start doing the bones of the building, the heating and air conditioning things. A couple of the other maybe numbers just to highlight. The east entrance, that would turn that alleyway into a welcoming center, welcoming entrance, is about $3 million out of the 4.7. The other $1.7 million is, it's not just landscaping, but we've got curb cut out and other pieces of the infrastructure that would be on the outside there. For the children's space, to have that secure stairway that we would need to make that a secure area now is about $500,000 when you secure that area and put a new stairway in that would be just used for the preschool during it, that it wouldn't be accessible to the rest of anybody else coming in the doors. The social hall, that vision of having it open to the east there and with the lights here, that's about $1.4 million, $400,000 to redo that. The kitchen, which we can talk a lot about how the kitchen is used now. Is it a catering kitchen? How often, which we still do, prepare meals in there, I think every week, to go down to Independence Boulevard Church. So it's got multiple uses that weren't envisioned 70 years ago when it was really set up as a kitchen that you would be serving your trays out like a cafeteria style when it was originally done. To redo the kitchen is about $750,000. additional renovations in the parlor would be about $500,000. So, and then when you put in some things like if you're going to redo the boiler, what that would cost is a fixed cost, even if you don't touch the third floor, for example, that's about another $2 million. So when you add all those things up, you get to the $19.6 million. And again, just to re-emphasize on that, it's a master plan. We did not want to cut back the vision. That's what this next step of the process is. What pieces of the vision really speak to people? What's the congregation feel we really need to do? And then we'll put the pieces back together, because it's not an all or nothing plan, but we do need input on priorities and what's important first. Let me introduce Dustin from Horizons Consulting. And again, Dustin can give his background, but we felt in this next piece, as we transition from a vision to what's feasible, they do this for a living. And you'll hear more about survey and what we're doing, but part of this first impressions and showing what the vision is part of that step. And now we're transitioning to okay, what can we really do, and how do we put that into a box? And that's part of what Dustin's and his group is helping us with. Dustin.
Well, an exciting time to be a part of Country Club Christian Church as you are preparing to celebrate your 100th anniversary. But your leadership is also seeing this as an opportunity to look ahead to your next 100 years. In her sermon last week, Carla gave a wonderful quote from Frank Shaw, Redemption, that you either get busy living or get busy dying. And your church is getting busy to live and move into another 100 years. And that's what this whole vision is about. These are first impression gatherings. We are not here to make decisions or to decide what we want to do. We're here simply to give you a chance to hear the vision, to hear about the projects, understand the basis of them, and then to hear about the next steps. Tomorrow, you'll be receiving, or this week, both an email and a hard copy of the vision statement. We have some of these available today. Some of you may have them. We have some up here, but all of you will be getting these this week. We'll be sending them a hard copy by mail and also by email, because we know that if we send it only by email, about 35% of people open their emails, which means 65% of people will not see this. And if we send it only by paper mail, there are those who never open up their mail. Any of you like that? And so you would never see it. So we know it may be a little bit more to do this way, but this is so important that everyone be exposed to this information. And so we'll be sending this both electronically and hard copy through the mail. Next week, a week from Monday, we'll be sending a survey to the congregation. Each of you will have an opportunity to participate in this survey as a part of a feasibility study that I am conducting. Most of you will receive it through electronic means. You'll get an email from the church, and in that email there will be a link that you can click on, and it will take you to the survey that will be hosted by SurveyMonkey. The results will be coming to Horizon, so I'll be the one receiving those survey results. And then others of you will be receiving it by hard copy through the mail, and that will be coming via letter from Horizons. And so if you get a letter, an envelope that says Horizons on it, don't throw it away, that's from us. And you can complete the survey and mail it. The deadline for the surveys will be August 15th. So if you are doing a paper copy, be sure to get it in the mail and return to us in time to receive it we get our mail first thing Monday morning, so if it's there first thing Monday morning on the 16th, we'll be able to include it. I will then take the results of all the surveys, and please, this is very important. It's critical that all of you participate in this, because we want all of your opinions and all of your perspectives as we take this step. I will then take all that and create a feasibility study report that will share the raw data of all the surveys that I received and conversations that we've been having, and I will share that with the Centennial Committee in September, and then they'll be putting together a proposal, and there's a retreat of your church board also middle of September, and then they will receive that report. I'll be sharing it with them as well. And then they'll be coming back at their October meeting and making a recommendation about what to do. Now, wouldn't it be great if we could say we can do all $19.7 million and just do it all? Maybe that's not going to be the result. So your board will make a recommendation as to what that first step would be in this master plan. And up until then, we are not asking for money. What we're asking for are your opinions, your views, your perspectives. We want to listen to you. We want to hear from you. And only after the board has received that report and has made a decision will we begin a campaign that would go into the end of the spring. The second way we want to listen to you today is just do some table talk conversations. So most of you are at tables, some of you are in chairs, and so we're going to be asking you to kind of create a circle. If you're at the back table, find a way to create a circle. We have table leaders, although we have such a great turnout. We may need some volunteer table leaders. We have some questions just to be conversation starters for you, and just as a way for your initial first impressions so that we can begin listening today. So how many of you are table leaders? Okay. So Dave and Leslie and Peter, I'm going to need you to, and Tom, if you and Kay could be table leaders, and find yourself at a table that doesn't have one, and we'll make sure that we have a table leader everywhere, and just have 10, 15 minutes of conversation. While you're talking, we're going to be putting up some drawings from the architect, and afterwards you can go and look at those.